When internal investigations are on the line, credibility matters. On this episode of the HR Investigations podcast, I sit down with Laura Middleton, CEO of Human Resource Certification Preparation, to unpack why HR certifications aren't just letters after your name. They're the key to influence, trust, and integrity in the investigation process. Tune in and elevate your HR authority.
Welcome to the HR Investigations podcast, exploring the issues, challenges, strategies, and solutions. Sponsored by RPCHR and hosted by Natalie Ivey, an HR consultant, licensed PI, and author of the best-selling book, How to Conduct Internal Investigations, a practical guide for human resource professionals. And now, here's Natalie.
Hey everybody, welcome to the HR Investigations podcast, exploring the issues, challenges, strategies, and solutions. I'm your host, Natalie Ivey, and today's episode is all about credibility, specifically how professional HR certification plays a critical role in how we conduct investigations and advise leadership. Joining me today is special guest Laura Middleton of Human Resource Certification Preparation, HRCP, a top provider of SHRM and HRCI prep materials and education. And we're going to be talking about how being certified helps HR professionals command respect, ensure compliance, and make an impact. All right, so let's get started. Laura, I'd really like you to just first share with our listening audience a little bit about your background, and then we're going to get right into it for the topic for today's show.
I'm happy to be with you, Natalie. Thanks for inviting me. I've been involved with HR for 35 years, and nearly my entire career has been devoted to helping people earn credentials in the HR field. I also teach HR and leadership at BYU, which is my alma mater. Just a little fun fact, I'm an expert pumpkin carver.
An expert pumpkin carver. That's amazing. Fantastic. Oh, and I imagine your skills are going to be used here pretty soon.
Right. I'm starting to ramp up.
All right. Fantastic. All right. Now, let's start with the big question. Why does certification matter in the context of internal investigations?
I think that it's kind of a twofold thing. You know, for the past 30 years, my company's been helping people get ready for their HR certification exam. And I would say that the two most important outcomes from that are an internal confidence. So there's an internal outcome. The person feels more confident. And then there's an external outcome, which is credibility, the way that they're viewed by other people. So as far as investigations go, you know, having an HR certification and the process that gets you there gives you personally the confidence to know what to do, to understand the right policies to have and how to follow them, to understand the legal ramifications that are involved in investigations. And then it also gives you credibility with other people. So others know that they can trust you to take the lead and to do things right, to take care of your workforce and to keep your organization out of trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we're talking about certification, we're talking about HRCI and SHRM certification. So for those of you who are fairly new to the HR profession and you're not really familiar at all with what those letters actually mean. The Human Resources Certification Institute has been around for a very long time and has been a certifying body in HR. And then the Society for Human Resource Management also has certifications. And that has been around for approximately 10 or so years. And you do have to have a certain amount of experience in human resources, and you also have to study, which is why certainly, Laura, your organization comes into play. This is not a board exam that you just kind of sit down and wing it. You really have to prepare, and it is a challenging exam on both fronts. Whether you go the SHRM or the HRCI route, it's not something that you just want to wing it. So you really do need to be prepared. But the other aspect of that is also, in my experience, and you know, I've worked in employee relations for a very long time and run an HR consulting company. But those who have really shown the mastery of knowledge within human resource management by earning their certification, it really does build that credibility. But it also shows that you understand the labor and employment laws, which is very much a critical component when you're doing the intake of an employee relations issue, let's say for sexual harassment. You really have to have a very good understanding and working knowledge of those laws. So let me ask you, Laura, have you seen a difference between how certified versus non-certified HR professionals are perceived by leadership teams. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely. HR is really a unique profession. Unlike doctors and lawyers, HR professionals don't have this clearly defined path to obtaining credentials and launching their careers. People who work in HR have this wide variety of backgrounds and experiences. A university degree is not required to work in human resources, but many HR people do choose to prepare for their careers by getting a college degree, either in human resources or another field like business or psychology or law, organizational management, perhaps. But others find their way into HR kind of accidentally, often with no formal education or background at all in the field. Some people transition to HR from another role in the organization, or sometimes it's a parallel move. Others get a promotion from an administrative support role. For example, I recently read about the experience of a woman she's an HR professional, but she earned a Bachelor of Arts degree in women's studies and sociology. And then after she graduated, she took a job as an administrative assistant at a construction company, of all things. She was working in operations. And then she transferred to another department, which included safety and risk management and also human resources. And she found herself really drawn to human resources. And so she decided to make that her career. So she had this really, winding path to get to HR. So the fact that HR is this profession with multiple entry points is kind of a double-edged sword. Many people have benefited from being able to get a career in HR with just about any background in the world. But the very fact that there is no standardized procedure to enter the profession makes many leaders question the credibility of their HR staff. Does that make sense?
Does. And I definitely share your sentiments, particularly when I find individuals coming up through the ranks from individual contributor roles, perhaps in an administrative role, and now they've really gone maybe back to school. They perhaps have now obtained a bachelor's degree or even moved on to grad school. And then, they progress their career in HR. But sometimes what I find is that they do stumble a little bit in establishing what I call street cred,
Right.
How do you get that? And, having that, certification, whether it's like, earning your PHR or your SPHR or, your SHRM CP, those are kind of those steps that you want to take in order to really elevate, your credibility. Yeah.
Right. It's what makes the certification in HR so important, because it does the same thing for HR people that an MD after their name does for doctors or a CPA does for accountants. It commands respect. It helps people know, this person really knows what they're talking about.
Yeah, precisely. And let's talk about real world impact. Can you share any examples of where a leader's certification status helped them to navigate maybe a challenging situation with more confidence or authority?
I'd like to tell you about Anthony. He was actually, he's one of these on the strange circuitous route to HR. He was actually planning to be an elementary school teacher. And he decided, I don't know the whole story behind how his career shifted, but he decided to go into HR. But he had no mentor, no sponsor, no relevant education, no network. So he's just kind of floundering out there trying to figure this out. But he learned about HR certification, and by studying and earning his certification, he gained the knowledge and tools and credibility that he needed to have a career in HR. Now, a decade and a half later, he's teaching classes to help other HR people prepare for their certification. So he really sees the HR certification as the turning point in his life, that he was able to flourish in this career, gain respect from other people, and to launch himself into a career that it looked like he hadn't been preparing himself for.
Yeah. Oh, terrific. Thank you. And that's terrific that he's kind of come full circle where he's now teaching others and helping to develop them. So his
Right.
has been, a benefit to those who have been in his sessions. So for HR professionals who are listening, who are maybe on the fence, whether they should go and, prepare by getting study materials and sit for the exam and work through that process, what would you say to them? How should they approach certification strategically? And if they're sitting on the fence, what do you recommend to them?
Well, of course, I recommend to them, get certified. For one thing, it's a way to demonstrate your commitment to the field. That I'm all in HR. Preparing for certification is not easy. Some people might assume that if I'm working in HR, I already know what I need to know to take the exam. But unfortunately, that's often not the case. Even seasoned professionals usually need to study for 3 or 4 months to be ready to take the exam. So it's just make a commitment to yourself, to your career, to your profession that you're going to do this, and then choose what method you're going to take. Am I going to study on my own? Am I going to enroll in the class? And people usually know themselves best, what approach is going to work for them. And just go all in and prepare. HR certification has been around for a long time. Like you mentioned, HRCI has been certifying people for nearly 50 years. And SHRM has been doing it for the past decade. And these are respected credentials, and it's worth the effort to do it. We have in recent years, though, found that there's a little bit of a shift, particularly with the younger generation, that they don't have quite the same appetite for a 4-year degree, and they don't have quite the same interest in this intensive study that's required to take this high-stakes exam with the prospect of possibly failing the exam. And so there are some people who have avoided it because they're afraid of failing. You don't have to be young to have that fear, of course. Where a large percentage of people who take the certification don't pass, that's a legitimate concern. And there is another kind of credential that is potentially appealing to these folks, and that is micro-credentials. I don't know, Natalie, if you have any experience or knowledge about micro-credentials?
Go ahead and share, Laura. Yeah.
All right. So this is something that's been growing. Micro-credentials have been around for a long time. They started appropriately in the IT field, where people were working in technology and they didn't necessarily need to have a degree. In fact, if you said, well, yeah, I earned a computer science degree 15 years ago, people you say, well, what have you done for me lately? You need to stay up on that. And so they have these micro-credentials. It's just a focused course on a particular topic. And then you take some sort of an assessment that's built into the course, and then you earn a micro-credential, and those micro-credentials can be stacked into digital badges. And a digital badge is this image that represents what you've earned. Those can be shared on LinkedIn or on an online resume, or even in the signature line of your email. And they demonstrate that you have up-to-date knowledge and skills in a particular area. And so as we recognize this shift, HR certification is still the gold standard and super important. But for many people, earning these micro-credentials is a way to show their interest in the field and that they have up-to-date knowledge in a particular area. And we've actually found a lot of certified HR professionals, people who have already earned their PHR, SPHR, or SHRM exam, want to get micro-credentials to show that they still have up-to-date knowledge in a particular area. So we've actually taken our content that has been used for 30 years to prepare people for certification, and we've broken it down into micro-credentials that can be earned independently, separately, just in a small particular area of HR. So that's another thing to consider along with certification. There are lots of different ways to earn credentials.
I love it. That makes perfect sense. Friend of ours is a CIO, and and he echoes your sentiments. Yeah, it's great that you got your computer science degree 10, 12 years ago, but wow, has the world changed. And I mean, welcome AI and everything that we're, with AI. So yeah, then circling back to what you were talking about, the gold standard with the certifications, I'd really like you to speak to the leg up that someone will have if they are out really looking for a new opportunity? How does that certification really give them an advantage? And can you tell me the latest data, Laura, on generally how much that might be worth in terms of compensation when they're negotiating for salary?
One thing that I would recommend in choosing which certification exam to work towards, whether the HRCI certifications or SHRM, would be to do a search for jobs in your area, in your region, because this varies region to region, and find out what are the employers looking for in an HR person. That can help inform you of which exam you should pursue. Otherwise, the exams are fairly equal. I always say this, and you can quote me. HR is HR is HR. It doesn't matter how you package it. It covers the same basic content. Both of the exams cover employee relations. They discuss the importance of investigations. Certifications are fairly equal in that way. But you just want to see what is the going certification in your particular area. And many, like yourself, Natalie, get both. And then you've got your bases covered. You've got both the HRCI and the SHRM certification. It can be life-changing in terms of opportunities. And like you mentioned, salary. A recent study showed that those who are certified have 5 or 10% higher salaries than those who don't.
When you're looking at, maybe $100,000, just picking a round number, 5 or 10% more is, that's a considerable amount of money. So I think it definitely pays for itself. Definitely a strong return on investment. So lastly, when I really pull together what we've discussed today and put it in the context of what really my team and I do for a living, which is internal investigations and working with organizations on employee relations issues. We consult on things when, we call it the bat phone, kind of like, there's trouble in Gotham City and, the mayor calls and Batman has to show up to come to the rescue.
Right.
To a certain degree, with my team and I, when we consult on cases with employee relations, that's usually the case. But what I can tell you is that if those of you in my listening audience who really are in employee relations or in HR and you're aspiring to maybe go into employee relations, the one thing that I am going to tell you is that you really do want to be a certified professional because you have to have a good mastery of the employment law, but you also have to have some really fundamental understanding of even strategic HR. You're going to have to think a little bit more bigger picture. As an example, when you're going to assess findings in an investigation, maybe it was a complainant who came forward and did allege something like, let's say, religious discrimination or something of that nature, and your investigation has determined, we've substantiated it, then you're really going to have to manage those conversations. Sometimes investigation outcomes can be relatively inconvenient, but as a certified HR professional, you really are going to be that voice of reason and strong risk management consultant in the room, working with your leaders. And, that really does kind of give you the leg up. All right. And, you don't want to, get snarky about it and say, well, Mr. CFO, well, I'm an SPHR. So there,
right.
You don't want to get snarky about it. But what I am here to tell you is that when you do show that you've had a mastery over a body of knowledge and that you really are carrying that credential after your name, it's very similar to a CPA. If they've gone through that, or like a certified financial planner, there is a little bit of street credibility that comes along with that does allow you to be a bit more influential when you're really trying to coach your leaders to make the right decisions. So, Laura, in closing out our podcast today, are there any final things that you would like to share with the group about what your organization does to help them in preparing for the exam and some of the benefits of working with your business?
We just have a comprehensive set of study materials that covers everything you need to know to pass the exam. Now, with the caveat, I said everything you need to know to pass the exam. That doesn't necessarily mean that it covers every single question on the exam, because we don't know what the questions are. But if you know our content, you'll pass the exam. We have a money-back guarantee. If you don't pass, you get your money back. So It's
fantastic. Laura and her team are absolutely they're the gold standard in providing you with the education. And as you know, if you've been listening to my podcast, then you can always come to us at RPCHR to really work on, getting some of that micro learning that Laura was talking about on how to conduct investigations. And by the way, I've got a workshop that is coming up on September 23rd and 24th, and you can check that out at rpchr.com on my events page. So let's go ahead and wrap it up here. Laura, I really want to thank you so much for joining us today. Your insights have been incredibly valuable, especially as our listeners really consider how to elevate their own presence through certification. And I'd like to turn it back to you, Laura. I understand that you have a special offer for the listeners on the HR Investigations podcast.
For those who are interested in preparing for certification or in earning micro-credentials, we'd love to provide a 15% discount for all of those who are listening to the podcast. You can use the discount code INVESTIGATE on our website, hrcp.com or micro.hrcp.com. And I wish you all the best of luck in earning your HR credentials.
All right. Thanks, Laura. And we will post in the show notes the link for your offer. And to thank everybody for tuning in. And if you found today's episode helpful, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your HR network. And until next time, invest smart, lead with purpose, and get going on your exam prep to get your certification to build your credibility. That's it for me. See ya.
Thanks for joining us today on the HR Investigations Podcast. Be sure to subscribe, like, and share the show with any colleagues who will benefit from our strategies and solutions. For free bonus resources, simply visit hr-investigations.com. And remember, if you'd like some help with improving your investigative skills, or if your organization is in need of an external investigator to help with a case, please get in touch with us. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.